Perfect. Thank you. All right. So thanks, Rob, for that fantastic overview. And Joe, thank you so much for having us here to share this with everyone. I really appreciate your time and everyone's time in watching this. So um, just a little bit more about us before I talk about the program that we did. So one of you mentioned that Brian McKenzie is my co-founder, and I just wanted to recognize our trusted volunteers. So Mike Juergens and Andy Galpin are our other two board members, and you've already met Rob, who's our associate director. Um, so it's a fantastic team. I'm really grateful to be working with this group. And we also have some amazing volunteers who've been helping us over the past year and a half or so since we were founded in doing some of our unfunded work that we've done. So as Joe mentioned, our mission is specifically, well, let me just say, first of all, also that we are a nonprofit. We're a 501c3 foundation, and we're a research-based nonprofit. So the service that we're providing is conducting research, and we're specifically looking at these breathing practices and evaluating the effectiveness of these breathing practices on different aspects of health and well-being and human performance. And we work in a range of populations, but adolescents, school-based adolescents, high school, middle school, college age, are all one of our primary target populations. So as part of that mission, last year, we designed, and then we had the pleasure of implementing a pilot of a school program. And this is based on the hypothesis that Rob alluded to earlier, that there's this multi-directional relationship between the breath, our emotions, and the body. And it goes in all directions as shown here. So, for example, how we're breathing has a direct impact on both our psychological response to stress, so our emotions, and our physiological response to stress through our bodies. So if we are breathing in this with our mouth open really fast, kind of like almost hyperventilating, like Rob mentioned, we start to feel stress in our bodies and emotionally. And then it goes the other way around. If we're starting to feel stress in our bodies or emotionally, we tend to breathe faster. So based on this hypothesis, we developed a program that uses slow breathing in a classroom setting to try to help students respond better to stress, both physiologically in their bodies and emotionally, psychologically. And so we piloted it last year, last fall. This was in person. We were grateful to be able to have it all in person before things started going all online. It was in a rural Pennsylvania high school. It was a health and PE class. And we started, the way it started was we informed all the parents all about it, and they, of course, signed waivers to give permission for their kids to participate. There was one teacher who, his name is Scott Russell, and you'll hear from him through a little video a little bit later on. And he was this fantastic leader in this program for his school in bringing the program to his school. He led the program in one of his classes, so it was 28 kids. And it was a 6-week program. And during those 6 weeks, these kids did a slow breathing practice. And they did this practice 3 times a week, and each practice was just 5 minutes. So that's what this graphic shows here. It's exactly like Rob said, it's exactly the breath ratio of inhales, holds, and exhales, and then holds again. So I personally call this the extended box breath. So it's a 5, and in this one we did 5 seconds for the inhale. Then after they inhaled for 5 seconds, they held their breath at the top. You can also call it a pause. I often like to call it a pause and not a hold. For some people, it's just easier to think of it that way. It feels a little less pressure. And then the extended part of this box is the exhale, where we're exhaling, and the kids were exhaling slower. So in this case, they were exhaling for approximately 10 seconds. And then at the bottom, again, they were pausing for 5 seconds. So that was our box. And they did this breath cycle 12 times. Only 12 times, which is actually exactly 5 minutes. And part of our purpose was really to design a practice that is really addresses the two components that Rob mentioned. So one is some practice that teaches kids a skill for a real time in the moment downshift. Now it wouldn't always have to be 5 minutes, obviously, but even one round of this uh, provides that real time downshift. And that's one of the things that we measured, which I'll get to in a minute. And then the other reason we designed it is like in this way is something that if they practiced regularly, the intent was if they practiced regularly as they did in this program 3 times a week for 6 weeks, it would help their bodies adapt to both the psychological and physiological stress responses so that those responses were healthier and provided them with a better foundation for managing stress in their lives. And so the way that this was run was that the teacher, Scott, led these kids. He guided them in this to pace them throughout so that they didn't have to just count in their heads. And he did this by, I think the first couple times he did it live, and then he did an audio recording so he didn't have to redo it himself every time. And he played this for every breath session. And then in order to evaluate the effectiveness of this program, we did a couple things. We did some surveys of measures of psychological responses to stress. And we also did what we call a CO2 tolerance test. So it's just a timed slow exhale that evaluates people's physiological stress responses. So we did all of these both before and after the program, and then also every week during the program. And the specific measures we evaluated general long-term stress response. This is known as trait. So trait stress, trait anxiety. There was a validated survey that we used, and this was done before and after the program. And this gets to that question of how well are these kids, how the extent to which this breath practice might be allowing these kids longer term physiological responses and psychological responses to stress to be more adaptive. And then we also evaluated their psychological stress on a short-term basis, which is called state stress or state anxiety. So in the moment, how is the person responding psychologically? To what degree are they kind of like upregulated, or are they able to downregulate even in kind of stressful moments? So that's what this little survey that's shown here on the right is. It was designed, this is a validated survey of state stress or state anxiety. It's really quick. These kids could fill it out in 15 to 25 seconds. And we had the kids do this as well as the CO2 tolerance test once a week on Wednesdays, both before and after their breath practice. So this measured how do they feel right before the breath practice, and then how much does this stress response differ immediately after just 5 minutes of slow breathing. So the CO2 tolerance test that measures, as I mentioned, the physiological responses to stress was done weekly, and then also at the beginning and the end of the program. And we at the end did some qualitative student surveys just to kind of hear from these kids in their own words how they thought about what they thought about the program. So this is just a little graph of the timeline, just to review what I just said, that program 6 weeks, the beginning and the end, we evaluated the general stress called trait anxiety, trait stress, and we evaluated the physiological responses to the CO2 tolerance tests. And then each week, this is what the weeks look like. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Scott led the kids in the 5-minute breathing practice. And then on Wednesdays, right before and right after the breath practice, they filled out the state scale survey and did the CO2 tolerance test. And we chose Wednesdays just thinking it might kind of reduce the chance of absences. There might be fewer absences maybe on Wednesdays for long weekends, or sick days maybe might come up more often on Mondays and Fridays. And before I tell you about the findings, I'll just share with you some thoughts from one of the students who did this. Her name is Alexis. She was a senior at the time at Girard High School where this was done. And she just graduated this past May or June and is going to Penn State next year.
Tanya, just to break you really quick, we're not getting audio on your video.
Oh, no audio. Okay, well, that's too bad. Let's see. I'm not sure how to change that, so I guess let's see if I can do it this way. Oh, I think I know what to do.
And I can edit this, so not a problem if it takes a moment.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, let's see if this works.
Yep. I to say thank you to everyone who donated to help this breathing program.
Yep, I'm gonna start one more time.
Cool.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who donated to help this breathing program. It greatly affected my life. I learned how to handle myself in a bunch of different situations just by changing your breath. It's really crazy how much of a difference different breathing techniques can make in your life. Thank you so much.
So that's Alexis. All right, so let's share what we found. In general, Scott and I and the students really felt like this was just a fantastic success, especially for just such a small pilot. One of the things that we wanted to evaluate was how feasible it was. You know, is this really something that could be implemented on a regular basis in a classroom setting, PE class or maybe otherwise? And we found absolutely. So every single kid completed at least 2/3 of the breath sessions, which is really pretty good. And I'd say out of 18 sessions to at least get 12 or 13 of them was really a great success. And then about 3/4 of them completed all of the weekly measurements. That was really helpful for us because then we were able to do some analyses to evaluate the effectiveness of this program. And so those results were really positive also. The long-term self-reported psychological stress, so that's what was measured with the trait stress scale, significantly decreased. So in other words, their longer-term abilities to respond on a psychological level to stress improved dramatically from before to after the 6-week program. And then their short-term adaptive stress responses, both their psychological responses, so the state stress or state anxiety, improved dramatically for 4 of the 6 weeks, and their physiological stress responses, so their CO2 tolerance, improved significantly also for 5 of the 6 weeks. So those were really considered great successes. And here we see some of the quotes from the kids. All of the kids filled out surveys, so there's a lot more. There were definitely some kids who, not everyone said this was the best thing in the, since sliced bread. Some of the kids thought it was like, okay, but they wouldn't use it again, and they didn't really know if it would, if it really helped them. Although we did see that even those kids, so all of the data that I saw at HHPF was anonymized, so I didn't see anyone's names, but Scott was able to look at them, and even some of the kids who said they didn't think it was that helpful and whatever, even they showed positive responses, positive benefits in the surveys. So that's telling. So you can see here a lot of kids found it helped reduce their stress dramatically, both in the moment and then also at other parts of their lives. 2 or 3 of the kids noted how they felt it helped their athleticism, their sports performance. And some of the kids were hoping that this kind of program would continue more in their school or in other classes. So this is Scott. He's the teacher, and he's got a 45-second or so video talking about his experiences and what he thought about the program.
Hey everyone, my name is Scott Russell. I'm a health and phys ed teacher in Girard, Pennsylvania. And last fall, we implemented a slow breathing program in my school to students in grades 10 through 12, and they had some amazing results. The biggest result that I saw was that now students have a tool in their belt that they can use to handle stress in a better way. So when students came to my class, they might have been a little triggered, they might have been a little anxious, might have been a little uptight. And just after 5 minutes of participating in a slow breathing protocol, they saw results. They were more calm, more relaxed, and less worried. So I thank you to everyone who has funded HHPF, and I look forward to the great work that they are doing in the future. Thank you.
Great. So that's the general summary. We really found it was successful. This kind of program was feasible in this setting. We're going to be doing some pilots this fall to evaluate in other settings, and then hopefully expand it to a full research study where we can evaluate it among a larger group of kids and really see, what kind of significant results we can find. And that's it. I just wanted to put this information up here in case people want to reach out to me or learn more about our organization.
Yeah, we'll link all of that. We'll link all the HHP Foundation